The crystal chandeliers of the Ashford Estate ballroom cast fractured light across 500 faces. Champagne flutes paused mid-air. Conversations died in whispers. Victoria Ashford's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Someone has stolen my diamond bracelet." Her finger pointed across the room. "And I know exactly who took it." Maya Chen stood near the service entrance, a silver tray balanced in her hands. The cream uniform she'd been required to wear suddenly felt like a spotlight. Every eye in the ballroom turned toward her. Search her. Victoria's voice carried the authority of old money and absolute certainty. Now, Richard Ashford appeared beside his wife, his cobalt-blue tuxedo immaculate. His expression held practiced sympathy that didn't reach his eyes. "Maya, I'm sure this is a misunderstanding. If you'll just cooperate with security." The head of security approached. Maya's tray clattered to the floor. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Her hands trembled as she raised them slightly, instinctively defensive. "I didn't take anything," Maya said, her voice steady despite the earthquake inside her chest. Victoria's laugh was crystalline and cruel. "Of course you'd say that." 6-year-old Sophie Ashford watched from the grand staircase, her white dress glowing in the chandelier light. She clutched her stuffed rabbit against her chest. Her eyes, wide and confused, met Maya's across the impossible distance. The security guard's hand closed around Maya's arm. "Ma'am, please come with me." The ballroom crowd parted like water. Their silence was louder than any accusation. 3 months earlier, Maya had stood at the same entrance with different expectations. The Ashford mansion rose like a monument to excess. Marble columns framed oak doors 20 feet high. Behind them stretched halls lined with portraits of ancestors, whose eyes seemed to judge everyone who passed. The estate overlooked the city from its hilltop perch, close enough to see the world, but far enough to remain untouched by it. Maya adjusted the strap of her canvas bag and pressed the service bell. She'd spent 8 years as a professional nanny. References glowed with praise. Background checks came back pristine. But standing here, she felt suddenly small. A butler answered. "Staff entrance is around back." The words weren't harsh. They didn't need to be. Maya's interview took place in Victoria Ashford's study. The woman sat behind a mahogany desk, her emerald green suit tailored to perfection. She didn't offer Maya a seat. "Sophie requires structure," Victoria said, reviewing Maya's resume without looking up. "She's difficult, doesn't speak much, avoids other children. You'll follow our schedule exactly. May I ask what happened to her previous nanny?" Victoria's eyes lifted, cold as winter glass. She wasn't a good fit. The job paid well, too well. Maya should have recognized the red flag. Sophie appeared in the doorway, silent as a ghost. She was small for 6, with dark curls and her mother's sharp features. But her eyes held something different, a loneliness Maya recognized from her own childhood. "Sophie, say hello to Miss Chen." Victoria's voice carried performance rather than warmth. Sophie stared at her shoes. Maya knelt to the girl's eye level. "I like your rabbit. Does he have a name?" Sophie's fingers tightened on the worn stuffed animal. She shook her head. "Maybe we can think of one together," Maya said softly. The smallest flicker crossed Sophie's face. Not quite a smile, but something like hope. Victoria stood abruptly. "You start Monday. Don't be late." Over the following weeks, Maya learned the mansion's unspoken rules. Staff used separate entrances, separate bathrooms, separate dishes. Richard barely acknowledged her existence, except to issue corrections. Victoria watched her with constant suspicion, as if waiting for Maya to confirm some pre-existing prejudice. But Sophie began to change. She started speaking in whispers, then sentences. She laughed when Maya read stories with funny voices. She began calling the rabbit Mr. Buttons. "You're good with her," the housekeeper, Mrs. Patterson, said one afternoon. "Better than the last 3. What happened to them?" Mrs. Patterson's expression tightened. "Same thing that happens to everyone Mrs. Ashford doesn't like." "They find reasons." Maya should have paid attention. The charity gala had been planned for months. Victoria insisted Maya work it. Sophie needs consistency, despite it being Maya's scheduled day off. Maya wore her uniform and stayed peripheral, watching Sophie from appropriate distances while the elite mingled. She'd grown used to being invisible. The wealthy had perfected the art of looking through service staff as if they were furniture. Victoria had been showing off her jewelry collection to a circle of admirers. The diamond bracelet had caught the light with almost obscene brilliance, a cascade of stones worth more than Maya would earn in 5 years. Then, Victoria's scream shattered the evening's manufactured elegance. "It's gone. My bracelet is gone." The crowd pressed closer, concern mixing with the barely concealed thrill of scandal. Richard materialized beside his wife, his hand on her shoulder in practiced support. "Are you certain?" he asked, loud enough for others to hear. "Could you have left it in the safe?" "I had it on my wrist." Victoria's voice climbed. "Someone took it while I was greeting guests." Maya continued clearing champagne flutes from a corner table, staying clear of the drama. But she felt the shift before she saw it, that prickling awareness of being watched. Victoria turned. Her eyes locked on Maya with frightening precision. "You." The word dropped like a stone. "You were standing near me." "I saw you." Maya's hands froze. "Mrs. Ashford, I was serving drinks on the other side of the room." "Don't lie." Victoria advanced, her dusty rose gown swirling. "Everyone saw you hovering. You've been so interested in my jewelry, always staring. I never empty your pockets." "All of them." The crowd had gone silent. Richard nodded to the head of security, a former police officer named Marcus. "Please escort Miss Chen somewhere private. We'll sort this out." Maya's heart slammed against her ribs. "I didn't take anything." "Then you won't mind proving it." Victoria's smile was sharp enough to cut. Marcus approached, his expression apologetic but firm. "Miss Chen, if you'll come with me." Sophie's voice broke through from the staircase. "Maya didn't do it." Victoria whirled. "Sophie, go to your room now." "But she didn't." "I said now." The girl fled, clutching Mr. Buttons. Her footsteps echoed up the marble stairs. Marcus led Maya to a small office off the main hall. Victoria and Richard followed, along with 2 board members who'd been standing nearby, witnesses to legitimize the humiliation. "Your bag, please," Marcus said quietly. Maya handed it over. He searched methodically. Wallet, keys, lip balm, a worn paperback, Sophie's hair ribbons that needed replacing. "No bracelet, her coat," Victoria insisted. "Her pockets." Maya removed her black cardigan. Marcus checked every pocket, every seam. Nothing. "Perhaps she hid it somewhere," Richard suggested, his reasonable tone somehow worse than Victoria's venom. "People like her often have accomplices. People like me." Maya's voice came out steady. "You mean black people?" "Say what you mean." The room went rigid with uncomfortable silence. Victoria's lips thinned. "I mean people with access to things they can't afford." "Don't make this about race." "You already did," Maya said, "the moment you looked at me." Maya sat on the narrow bed in her quarters above the garage. The small room felt like a cell. Her hands still trembled, adrenaline refusing to fade. The bracelet had eventually been found in Victoria's own jewelry box, misplaced during the evening's chaos. The apology had been performative and hollow. "We're all so relieved this was a misunderstanding." No acknowledgement of the accusation's weight. No recognition of the public humiliation. Just relief that their property was safe. Maya pressed her palms against her eyes, willing the tears back. She wouldn't give them that satisfaction. Outside her window, the city sprawled in glittering indifference. Thousands of lights, thousands of lives, all continuing as if nothing had happened. As if she hadn't been stripped of dignity in front of strangers who'd already decided her guilt based on nothing but her skin. Her phone buzzed. Messages from other staff. "You okay?" That was messed up. "Want company?" She texted back brief reassurances and turned the phone face down. Her grandmother's photograph sat on the nightstand, the only decoration she'd allowed herself. Grandma rose in her church clothes, smiling with that knowing warmth that had carried Maya through childhood. "Dignity isn't what they give you, baby girl," Rose used to say. "It's what they can't take away. Remember that." But tonight dignity felt like a luxury Maya couldn't afford. She picked up another photograph from her bag, one she kept hidden. A young woman in a hospital bed, pale and exhausted, holding a newborn. The woman's face was turned slightly away from the camera, but her hand cradled the baby with infinite gentleness. Maya had found the photo in her grandmother's things after Rose died. No explanation, no name written on the back, just a date, May 17th, 1994, Maya's birthday. She'd asked the adoption agency for information, but sealed records stayed sealed. The only thing Rose had ever told her: "Your mama loved you enough to give you a better life. Don't ever doubt that." But what life? Maya had spent 30 years wondering, building herself from nothing, climbing through education and determination, only to be reduced to assumptions and accusations in a ballroom full of strangers. She set the photograph down and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow she'd have to face them again. Face Sophie's confusion, Victoria's suspicion, Richard's dismissive politeness. Tomorrow she'd have to pretend nothing had changed, but something had broken tonight. Some last thread of benefit of the doubt had snapped. Maya closed her eyes and made a decision. She'd stay for Sophie. Only Sophie. The girl needed someone who saw her as more than a trophy or a disappointment. And then Maya would leave. Find another family. Start over. Again. Sleep came in fragments, interrupted by dreams that bled into memories. Maya was 7 again, sitting in her grandmother's kitchen. The apartment was tiny. 1 bedroom they shared, a kitchen barely big enough for 2. But Rose had made it warm. Crocheted blankets, plants in recycled containers, the smell of whatever miracle she'd created from discount groceries. "Why don't I have a mama?" young Maya had asked, watching Rose stir a pot on the stove. Rose's hand had paused just for a moment. "You do, baby. She just couldn't keep you safe." From what? From people who didn't understand. Rose had turned, kneeling to Maya's level. "Your mama came from a place where love wasn't allowed to look like you and her, so she made the hardest choice any mother can make. Did she not want me?" "Oh no, sweetness." Rose's eyes had filled. "She wanted you so much it hurt. But wanting isn't always enough. She knew you'd need more than she could give in that world." Maya hadn't understood then. But Rose had raised her with fierce devotion. 3 jobs, night classes, whatever it took. She taught Maya to read before kindergarten, to stand straight, to speak clearly, to never apologize for taking up space. "You're going to face people who want to make you small," Rose had said. "People who'll judge you before you open your mouth. You prove them wrong by being undeniable." Maya had carried that lesson into adulthood. Education, certifications, impeccable references. She'd thought if she was good enough, worked hard enough, the world would have to recognize her worth. The gala had shattered that illusion. Another memory surfaced. Rose's final weeks in the hospital. Cancer stealing her piece by piece. Maya had been 23, fresh out of college, drowning in student debt and grief. "There's something I should have told you," Rose had whispered, her voice thin as paper. "About your mother. Grandma rest. We can talk later." "No time for later, baby." Rose's hand had gripped Maya's with surprising strength. "Your mother. She came from money. Real money. But her family didn't approve of the man she loved. When she got pregnant, they gave her a choice. Give you up or lose everything." Maya had frozen. "What was her name?" "Elizabeth." Rose's eyes drifted. "Elizabeth, she made me promise to protect you." "To keep you away from them? From who?" But Rose had faded into sleep, and the next morning she'd slipped into a coma. She'd died without saying more. Maya had tried to investigate, but every lead hit a wall. Sealed adoption records. No last name, no city. Just Elizabeth and a promise Rose had carried to her grave. Now Maya stood at her window. That conversation echoing across 7 years. Elizabeth. Money. Family who didn't approve. She'd stopped searching after a while, convinced the past was buried beyond reach, better to focus on the future she could control. But tonight, something needled at her consciousness, the way Victoria had looked at her. The viciousness beneath the accusation. The fear in Richard's eyes when Maya had confronted the racism directly. It felt personal, not just prejudice but something specific. Maya shook her head. Exhaustion was making her paranoid. Rich people were all the same, convinced their wealth made them superior, their judgments beyond question. Tomorrow she'd give notice. 2 weeks professional and clean. Sophie would be sad, but she'd recover. Children were resilient. Maya tried to believe it. 3 days later, Sophie begged Maya to read in the library. The girl had been clingy since the gala, following Maya everywhere, asking questions in whispers. Why were they mean to you? Did you really not take the bracelet? Are you going to leave? Maya had deflected, offering comfort without details. But Sophie was perceptive beyond her years. She knew something had broken. The library was Victoria's domain. Walls of leather-bound books no one read, a mahogany desk positioned for maximum intimidation. Maya rarely entered unless specifically required. Sophie chose a story about a lost rabbit, curling into the window seat. Maya read aloud, watching the tension drain from the girl's small shoulders. For these moments, the job was worth it. These glimpses of the child Sophie could become, away from her parents' cold perfection. I have to use the bathroom, Sophie announced suddenly. I'll wait here. The girl scampered off. Maya set the book aside and stood to stretch. The library window overlooked the garden, where groundskeepers trimmed hedges into architectural precision. Everything the Ashfords touched had to be controlled, shaped, made acceptable. She turned to retrieve her water bottle from near the desk and froze. A folder lay partially visible in a drawer that hadn't been fully closed. The label was handwritten in elegant script, Private Adoption 1994. Maya's breath caught. 1994, her birth year. She glanced at the doorway. Empty. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This was wrong. Invasion of privacy. Grounds for immediate dismissal. But her hands moved anyway. The folder was thick, stuffed with documents. Legal papers stamped and signed. Court orders, hospital records, and on top a birth certificate named Baby Girl Ashford. Mother, Elizabeth Catherine Ashford. Father, unknown. Date, May 17, 1994. Maya's vision tunneled. The edges of the room went soft and distant. That date. Her date. Her hand shook as she flipped through more pages. An adoption decree, signed by Elizabeth Ashford and witnessed by Richard and Victoria Ashford. The statement of relinquishment, Elizabeth's signature wavering across the bottom, and photographs, Elizabeth holding a newborn, the same image Maya had carried for years. But these photos showed more. Elizabeth's face turned toward the camera in some shots, her expression devastated. Grief carved into every feature. She looked like Maya, the same eyes, same mouth, same shape to her face. Another document, a trust fund, established by Charles Ashford, Elizabeth's father, deceased 1998. Primary beneficiary, Elizabeth Catherine Ashford. Secondary beneficiary, any biological children of Elizabeth Catherine Ashford. The trust was worth $47 million. Maya's knees went weak. She grabbed the desk edge for support. Sophie's voice called from down the hall. Maya, where are you? Panic flooded through her. Maya yanked out her phone and photographed every page, her hands shaking so badly some shots blurred. She shoved the folder back into the drawer, pushing it closed. Coming, sweetie. She forced her legs to move, her face to compose itself. Sophie appeared in the doorway, clutching Mr. Buttons. Can we finish the story? Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. She picked up the book and read mechanically, the words meaningless noise. Her mind screamed with questions, implications, impossibilities. Elizabeth Ashford was her mother. The Ashfords knew. They'd always known. Maya waited 3 days. 3 days of forcing normalcy, while her mind raced through possibilities. 3 days of watching Victoria and Richard, searching for tells, for acknowledgement, for any sign they knew what she'd discovered. They treated her exactly the same. Cold efficiency, polite dismissal, the bracelet incident already forgotten, at least by them. On the 4th day, Maya requested a meeting. Victoria's assistant scheduled 15 minutes between the woman's Pilates class and a charity board call. Maya entered Victoria's study with the folder in her bag. Her heart was a war drum, but her face remained calm. Rose had taught her that. Victoria glanced up from her laptop. "Make it quick. I have a busy afternoon. I found something in the library." Maya set the folder on the desk. "I think we need to talk about it." Victoria's eyes flicked to the label. Her entire body went rigid. The color drained from her face, then rushed back in an angry flush. "You went through my private files. Your drawer was open. Sophie and I were reading. You had no right." Victoria stood abruptly, her chair scraping back. "This is theft. Invasion of privacy. This is my birth certificate." Maya's voice stayed level despite the tremor in her hands. "Elizabeth Ashford was my mother. You've known all along." The silence stretched like wire about to snap. Victoria's expression shifted, from shock to calculation to cold fury. "That changes nothing. It changes everything. The trust fund lists me as beneficiary. You think blood makes you family?" Victoria's laugh was harsh. "You think a piece of paper gives you rights to this house, this name?" Richard appeared in the doorway. His face paled when he saw the folder. "Victoria, what's going on?" "She found Elizabeth's adoption file." "She knows." Richard's jaw tightened. He closed the door behind him and approached the desk with deliberate calm. "Miss Chen, Maya, I understand this must be shocking for you." "Shocking?" Maya's composure cracked. "You let me work here for months, treating me like hired help when I'm Elizabeth's daughter." "Your what, niece?" "Granddaughter." "Elizabeth made her choice 30 years ago," Richard said. "She signed away her rights. Legally, you have no claim." The trust fund disagrees. Richard and Victoria exchanged a glance, some unspoken communication passing between them. "That trust is complex," Richard said carefully. "Tied up in legal structures you don't understand. Charles Ashford's will had specific conditions. I can read." Maya pulled out her phone, showing the photographed documents. "Secondary beneficiary. Any biological children of Elizabeth Catherine Ashford. I'm her biological child. The trust is mine." Victoria's face twisted. "I ungrateful little—" "Victoria," Richard's voice cut sharp. "Not now." He turned back to Maya, his expression shifting to something that might have passed for sympathy if his eyes weren't so cold. "What do you want?" "Money, a settlement. Name your price and we'll make this go away quietly." Maya had expected this, but hearing it said out loud still felt like a punch. "I want the truth. About my mother. About why you hid this from me." "Elizabeth was troubled," Victoria said flatly. "She got involved with an inappropriate man. When she got pregnant, she realized she couldn't provide a proper life. We arranged everything. A good family, a clean break. She died in 2019. It's over. Inappropriate how? Does it matter?" Victoria's voice dripped condescension. "The past is past. You were given opportunities Elizabeth couldn't provide. Be grateful and move on." Maya stared at them both. The people who'd shared her mother's home, who'd watched her grow up somewhere else, who'd hired her to care for their granddaughter, without ever acknowledging the connection. "The bracelet," Maya said slowly. "At the gala. You accused me knowing exactly who I was." Richard's expression didn't change. "That was an unfortunate misunderstanding. It was deliberate. You wanted to discredit me. Get rid of me before I found out." Victoria smiled without warmth. "You're being paranoid, and if you pursue this ridiculous claim, you'll find yourself facing charges for theft of confidential documents, corporate espionage, breaking non-disclosure agreements in your employment contract, I never signed— You signed an NDA on your first day, Richard interrupted. It's standard for all staff with access to family information. You violated it the moment you took photos. Maya's stomach dropped. She'd been so focused on the adoption papers, she'd forgotten the stack of forms she'd signed during onboarding. We can make your life very difficult, Victoria continued. Or we can write you a check, you sign a release, and you disappear back to whatever life you built. Your choice. The room felt like it was closing in. Maya forced herself to breathe. I need time to think. You have 24 hours, Richard said. After that, we proceed legally. And trust me, Miss Chen, our lawyers are very good. Maya left the study with her phone clutched tight enough to hurt. Her mind raced through options, each worse than the last. They had power, money, lawyers. She had photographs and a birth certificate she'd stolen from a private drawer. She made it to her quarters before the shaking started. Anger and fear mixing into something toxic. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Miss Chen? This is David Torres from Legal Aid Society. Your name was flagged in our system for a consultation request you made 7 years ago about sealed adoption records. Maya's breath caught. She'd tried once, after Rose died, to find information about Elizabeth. The free legal clinic had told her it was impossible without cause. I'm following up because I've been investigating the Ashford family for estate fraud. If you have information about Elizabeth Ashford's biological children, I need to speak with you immediately. How did you get my number? Public records link you to employment at the Ashford estate. Miss Chen, if you're who I think you are, you're in danger. They've done this before. Done what? Made people disappear. Legally, financially. 3 staff members in the past decade have tried to bring claims against the family. All 3 ended up discredited, bankrupted, or facing charges. Can you meet me? Maya's hands trembled. They threatened me today. Said I have 24 hours. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? 9 a.m. at the courthouse? I have Sophie, the girl I care for. I can't just leave. Bring her if you need to. But you need protection, Miss Chen, and I need your evidence. Maya agreed and ended the call. Her mind spun with possibilities. A lawyer. Investigation. Maybe she wasn't alone. She looked at the photographs on her phone. Elizabeth's face. The trust fund documents, proof. A knock at her door made her jump. Sophie stood there in her nightgown, clutching Mr. Buttons. Tears streaked her face. I heard grandmother yelling. Are you leaving? Maya pulled the girl into her arms. I don't know, sweetie. Please don't go. You're the only one who's nice to me. The words broke something in Maya's chest. She thought of her mother, Elizabeth, making an impossible choice 30 years ago, giving up everything for what she thought was best. I need to tell you something, Maya said softly. Come sit. She brought Sophie inside and closed the door. The girl curled against her on the bed. Your grandmother's mother, a woman named Elizabeth, she was my mother too. Sophie's eyes went wide. So we're related? Sort of. Less complicated, but yes. Elizabeth was my biological mother. Why didn't anyone tell me? They didn't want anyone to know. Sophie processed this with the serious intensity of childhood. Does that mean you're my aunt? Maya hadn't considered the genealogy. I suppose it does. Good. Sophie squeezed tighter. I always wanted family who was nice. A commotion erupted downstairs. Voices raised. The sound of the front door slamming. Maya's phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Patterson, the housekeeper. Police just arrived. Mrs. Ashford filed a complaint. You need to leave now. Terror flooded through her. Maya grabbed her bag, Sophie's hand. We have to go. Where? I don't know. But we can't stay here. They ran down the back stairs, through the kitchen, out the service entrance. Maya's car was parked in the staff lot, blessedly close. Blue lights flashed in the main driveway. Voices shouted. Maya buckled Sophie in and started the engine. Her hands shook on the wheel. As they pulled away, she saw Victoria standing in the mansion's entrance, backlit and triumphant. Richard beside her, phone pressed to his ear. Maya's phone rang again. David Torres. She answered on speaker. They moved faster than I expected, he said without preamble. Warrant for your arrest. Theft of confidential documents and kidnapping. Kidnapping. Sophie came with me willingly. Doesn't matter. You took a minor without parental permission. You need to bring her back and turn yourself in, or this gets much worse. Maya looked at Sophie in the rearview mirror. The girl met her eyes, frightened but trusting. Miss Chen, are you there? The bracelet, Maya said suddenly. At the gala. They said it was found in Victoria's jewelry box. But what if there's security footage showing who actually put it there? That's a reach. They set me up once. They're setting me up now. There has to be evidence. Silence. Then there's a forensic analyst I know. If we can get access to the estate's security system, but that requires a warrant, and we don't have grounds. I have photographs of adoption documents and a trust fund I'm legally entitled to. That's fraud if they've been hiding it. Isn't that grounds? David exhaled slowly. Possibly. But you need to bring Sophie back now before they add more charges. Maya's chest ached. She couldn't protect Sophie and fight the Ashfords simultaneously. The girl deserved better than being caught in this war. She turned the car around. I'm bringing her back, Maya said, but I'm not disappearing. Tell them I'll be at the courthouse at 9 a.m. tomorrow. With every document I have, they'll arrest you tonight. Then I'll spend the night in jail. But they're not silencing me. She pulled into the Ashford driveway. Police officers approached, hands on their belts. Sophie started crying. Please don't leave me with them. Maya's heart shattered. I have to. But I promise I'm going to fix this. You can't promise that. No, Maya admitted. But I can promise I won't stop trying. The officers opened the door. Victoria appeared, her face a mask of concern for the benefit of witnesses. Sophie, thank God you're safe. She pulled the girl away from Maya. What were you thinking running off with her? Sophie struggled. She didn't take me. I went with her. Hush, darling. You're confused. An officer helped Maya out of the car. Cold metal clicked around her wrists. Maya Chen, you're under arrest for theft, kidnapping, and trespassing. You have the right to remain silent. The words blurred. Maya watched Sophie's face. The girl was screaming now, fighting Victoria's grip. Richard emerged from the house holding something. He approached the officers. We found this in Miss Chen's quarters. My wife's diamond bracelet. The one that went missing at the gala. He held up a familiar glittering cascade of stones. Victoria's performance was flawless. I knew it. I knew she took it. Maya's world tilted. I never. That's impossible. Save it for your lawyer, the officer said, guiding her toward the patrol car. As they drove away, Maya twisted to see Sophie still fighting in Victoria's arms. The girl's screams faded behind bulletproof glass. Maya's phone, confiscated but still on, buzzed one last time before the officer turned it off. A message from David Torres. I found something. Elizabeth tried to contact you twice before she died. Letters sent to the adoption agency. Both intercepted. I'll bring them to court. Don't give up. The patrol car turned onto the highway. Behind them, the Ashford mansion blazed with light. A beacon and a prison. Maya closed her eyes and thought of her grandmother's words. Of Elizabeth's face in the photograph, grieving and determined. Of Sophie's trust and love, she wouldn't give up. Couldn't. The truth was worth fighting for, even if it cost everything. To be continued. The holding cell smelled of disinfectant and desperation. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead with migraine-inducing persistence. Maya sat on a metal bench, still in her work clothes, her mind cycling through everything that had collapsed in 12 hours. Her fingerprints were in the system now. Her mugshot taken from 3 angles. The intake officer had been efficient and impersonal, processing her like damaged goods. Through the cinderblock walls, she heard other voices, crying, arguing, laughing with manic edge. She'd never imagined herself here. Despite everything she'd faced, some part of her had believed that working hard and staying honest would be enough. The Ashfords had shattered that illusion with surgical precision. A guard brought dinner, a sandwich wrapped in plastic, apple juice in a tiny carton. Maya couldn't eat. Her stomach was a clenched fist. She thought of Sophie's face. The girl's scream still echoed. Maya had promised to protect her, and instead she'd made everything worse. Sophie was back in that cold mansion, with people who saw her as property to manage, not a child to love. Her grandmother's photograph was gone, left behind in her quarters, probably seized as evidence or thrown away. 7 years of carrying Rose's memory, and now even that was lost. Maya pressed her palms against her eyes. She wouldn't cry, not here, not where they could see. But the tears came anyway, silent and bitter and exhausted. The door clanged open. A guard appeared with an older woman in a rumpled blazer. "Maya Chen, I'm Patricia Okonkwo, public defender assigned to your case. We need to talk." They sat in a consultation room barely larger than a closet. Patricia spread papers across the scarred table. "You're facing serious charges. Theft of property over $5,000, kidnapping of a minor, theft of confidential documents, trespassing. The Ashfords are pushing for maximum prosecution." "I didn't do any of those things. Evidence says otherwise. The bracelet was found in your room." "Sophie was removed from the property without parental permission. She came with me because she was scared. And I never stole that bracelet. They planted it." Patricia's expression was professionally sympathetic but skeptical. "That's a serious accusation against a prominent family. Do you have proof?" Maya hesitated. Her phone was confiscated. The photographs were on it, but would they still be there? Or would they mysteriously vanish in police custody? "I have a lawyer," Maya said. "David Torres from Legal Aid Society. He contacted me about—" "David Torres isn't licensed for criminal defense. He handles civil estate law. This is criminal court, Miss Chen. I'm your lawyer unless you can afford private counsel." Maya's heart sank. "Can you call him?" "He has information about the Ashfords, about fraud, about my mother, your mother." Maya took a breath and explained. Elizabeth, the adoption, the trust fund, the documents she'd found. Patricia's expression shifted from skepticism to careful attention. "If that's true, it explains the kidnapping charge. They're not just protecting their reputation. They're protecting $47 million. Then help me prove it." Patricia gathered her papers. "I'll contact David Torres. But Maya, you need to understand, even if everything you're saying is true, you still violated laws. You took confidential documents without permission. You removed a child from her legal guardians. The Ashfords have resources to bury you in legal fees even if you're innocent. So I should just give up. I'm saying prepare for a long fight, and possibly a plea deal." After Patricia left, Maya was returned to the cell. The lights never dimmed. Time became meaningless, an endless fluorescent present. She lay on the bench and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere out there, Sophie was probably crying herself to sleep. Victoria and Richard were probably celebrating. Elizabeth's memory was probably being erased further, reduced to an inconvenient detail in their perfect family narrative. Maya's hand moved to her pocket, instinctively reaching for the photograph she'd carried for years. Empty. She closed her eyes and tried to remember her grandmother's voice. Rose's strength. Elizabeth's choice. They'd both fought impossible battles. Both sacrificed everything for love. Maya could do the same. She had to believe it, because the alternative was too heavy to carry. Morning came with processed eggs and burned coffee. Maya forced herself to eat. She'd need strength for whatever came next. Patricia returned at 8 a.m. with David Torres. The moment Maya saw him, a compact man in his 50s with steel-gray hair and intense eyes, relief flooded through her. "I've been investigating the Ashfords for 3 years," David said without preamble. "Suspected estate fraud, misappropriation of trust funds, document forgery. But I couldn't prove anything until you found those adoption papers." He spread documents across the table, photographs printed from Maya's phone. They'd retrieved them before the police could confiscate the device. Elizabeth Ashford died in 2019. Official cause, heart failure. But her medical records tell a different story. David pulled out hospital reports. She had a treatable condition. But her medication was consistently wrong. Wrong dosage, wrong type. Someone was altering her prescriptions. Maya's blood went cold. They killed her? I can't prove intent, but I can prove negligence. And I can prove they've been embezzling from her trust for decades. He showed bank statements, transfer records. The trust was supposed to grow. Instead, they've been siphoning millions through shell companies. Patricia leaned forward. This changes everything. If Maya is the rightful beneficiary, and they've been stealing from her inheritance, then the theft charge is a projection, David finished. Classic abuser tactic. Accuse the victim of what you're doing yourself. What about the bracelet? Maya asked. They planted it in my room. Security footage, David said. The estate has cameras everywhere. If we can get access, that requires a warrant, Patricia said. And we don't have grounds yet. We do now. David pulled out more papers, yellowed with age. These are letters, written by Elizabeth to the adoption agency that handled your case. She requested contact with you twice. Once when you turned 18. Once again in 2018, a year before she died. Maya's hands trembled as she took the letters. Elizabeth's handwriting was elegant but shaky. Dear Maya, the first one began, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't know if you'll want to know me. But I need you to understand. Giving you up was the worst day of my life, and loving you enough to do it was the best thing I've ever done. Maya couldn't read further. Tears blurred the words. The adoption agency has records of sending these letters to your last known address, David continued. But you never received them, did you? No, never, because the Ashfords intercepted them. They've been monitoring the adoption agency's communications for 30 years, making sure you and Elizabeth never connected. That's criminal interference with legal communications, obstruction, conspiracy. Patricia's expression shifted. We can get that warrant, David nodded. I've already filed for emergency discovery. Judge Anderson is hearing it at 9 a.m. If she grants access to the estate's security system, we'll have proof of the bracelet plant. And if the Ashfords refuse to comply, it looks like they're hiding something, Patricia finished. Which strengthens our case. Maya's mind reeled. Why are you helping me? You don't even know me. David's expression softened. I knew Elizabeth, briefly. She came to my office in 2018 asking about challenging the adoption seal. She was terrified, said her family would destroy her if they found out. I told her it was nearly impossible without your consent. She left crying. He paused. A year later, she was dead. I've been trying to find you ever since, to tell you what happened, to help you get what's rightfully yours. Elizabeth wanted to find me. She never stopped wanting to find you. She just never had the courage to defy her family. Until the end, David's voice roughened. The second letter, the one from 2018, she sent that against explicit threats. Victoria told her if she contacted you, she'd be removed from the estate and institutionalized. Elizabeth sent it anyway. Maya looked at the second letter. The handwriting was weaker, more desperate. My dearest daughter, I'm dying. The doctors say I have time, but I know better. I need you to know the truth about your father, about why I had to give you up, about the inheritance that's rightfully yours. They're trying to erase you. Don't let them. Fight for what's yours. Fight for the family we never got to be. The letter ended abruptly, unsigned. She had a stroke while writing that, David said quietly. She was found 3 hours later. By the time she reached the hospital, the damage was done. She died 6 months later, unable to speak. Maya's chest felt like it was caving in. They killed her, slowly, to keep her quiet. We can't prove that in criminal court, but we can prove theft, fraud, obstruction, and we can get you your inheritance. Every penny of that trust fund, plus damages. Patricia checked her watch. Court in 30 minutes. We need to move. The courtroom was smaller than Maya expected. Judge Karen Anderson presided from the bench, a black woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no-nonsense expression. The Ashfords sat with their legal team. Victoria wore royal blue, Richard a charcoal suit. They looked composed, confident, utterly certain of victory. They hadn't expected David Torres. "Your Honor," David began, "we're requesting emergency access to security, footage from the Ashford estate, for the dates of April 15th through April 20th. We have reason to believe evidence was planted to frame Miss Chen for theft." The Ashford's lead attorney, a silver-haired man named Whitmore, stood immediately. "This is a fishing expedition, Your Honor. Miss Chen was caught with stolen property. Security footage is private, not when it contains evidence of a crime," Judge Anderson interrupted. "Mr. Torres, what specifically do you expect to find?" "Footage showing Mrs. Victoria Ashford planting her own bracelet in Miss Chen's quarters to manufacture theft charges. This follows a pattern of intimidation after Miss Chen discovered she's the biological daughter of Elizabeth Ashford and legal beneficiary of a $47 million trust fund the defendants have been embezzling from for decades." The courtroom erupted. Reporters in the back surged forward. Judge Anderson's gavel cracked like thunder. "Order!" Mr. Whitmore, response. Whitmore's composure flickered. "These are wild accusations without foundation. I have documentation." David approached the bench with files. Birth certificate, adoption decree, trust fund documents, intercepted letters from Elizabeth Ashford attempting to contact her biological daughter. All retrieved by Miss Chen from the defendant's private files. "She stole those documents," Victoria burst out. "She violated her employment contract. Mrs. Ashford, you'll have your turn to speak," Judge Anderson said coldly. She reviewed the documents, her expression darkening. "These are certified legal documents. Mr. Torres, how did Miss Chen access them?" "They were left in an unsecured drawer in a shared space. Miss Chen photographed them when she realized they pertained to her biological identity, which the defendants deliberately concealed while employing her to care for their granddaughter." Judge Anderson looked at Victoria. "You hired your niece to work as your employee without disclosing the familial relationship." "She's not our niece," Richard interjected. "Elizabeth gave up her parental rights. That doesn't erase biological connection or inheritance law," the judge said, "or the ethical obligation to disclose." Whitmore tried to regain control. "Your Honor, even if Miss Chen is biologically related to the Ashfords, that doesn't excuse theft, kidnapping. Where's the child?" Judge Anderson asked. "Sophie Ashford. I want her brought to my chambers." Victoria paled. "That's highly irregular. So is accusing your employee of theft when she's potentially your beneficiary. Bailiff, contact the Ashford residence. Have Sophie brought here immediately." 20 minutes later, Sophie entered with a court-appointed advocate. The girl looked small and frightened, clutching Mr. Buttons. Judge Anderson's expression softened. "Hello, Sophie. I need to ask you some questions." "Is that okay?" Sophie nodded. "Did Maya take you from your house, or did you go with her willingly?" "I went with her." Grandmother was yelling. Maya was scared. "I didn't want her to leave." "Why didn't you want her to leave?" "Because she's the only one who's nice to me." Sophie's voice broke. "She reads to me." "She listens." "Grandmother and grandfather are always busy or angry." Victoria stood. "Your Honor, the child is confused." "Sit down, Mrs. Ashford." Judge Anderson turned back to Sophie. "Did you know Maya is related to you?" "She told me." "She said Grandmother Elizabeth was her mother, too." "That makes us family." "Did your grandparents ever tell you that?" "No. They don't talk about Grandmother Elizabeth. They say she was sick." Judge Anderson reviewed her notes. "Mr. Torres, the security footage request is granted." "Mr. Whitmore, your clients will provide full access within 24 hours or face contempt charges." "Your Honor, I've seen enough to warrant investigation." "Miss Chen is released on her own recognizance. All charges are suspended pending review of evidence." This court stands adjourned. The gavel fell. Victoria and Richard sat frozen, their carefully constructed world cracking apart. David squeezed Maya's shoulder. "We're not done, but this is a start." Sophie broke free from the advocate and ran to Maya, wrapping her arms around her waist. "You came back. I promised I would." 6 months later, Maya stood in the mansion's entrance hall. But she wasn't arriving as staff. She was arriving as owner. The legal battle had been brutal. The security footage had shown exactly what David predicted. Victoria planting the bracelet in Maya's room the night before police arrived. Further investigation revealed decades of embezzlement, forged documents, and systematic intimidation of anyone who questioned the Ashfords' control of Elizabeth's trust. Victoria and Richard were both sentenced. Victoria for fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction, 8 years. Richard for embezzlement and elder abuse in Elizabeth's death, 12 years. Their appeals were pending, but the evidence was overwhelming. The trust fund was released to Maya, $47 million, plus 30 years of growth they'd stolen. After legal fees and restitution to other victims the Ashfords had defrauded, Maya had enough to change lives. The mansion was hers now. But she'd transformed it completely. The grand ballroom where she'd been publicly humiliated was now a community center. The library where she'd discovered the truth was a scholarship office. The halls filled with portraits of judgmental ancestors were now covered with children's art. Sophie lived with her permanently. The adoption had been finalized last month. The girl who'd barely spoken now laughed constantly. Running through rooms filled with other foster children and working families who used the center's resources, Maya kept one room unchanged, Elizabeth's bedroom. She'd found more letters there never sent. Journals documenting years of silent grief. Photographs of a baby Elizabeth had never stopped loving. "Maya," Sophie appeared in the doorway. "People are arriving for the ribbon cutting." Maya turned from Elizabeth's photograph. The dedication ceremony was today, officially opening the Elizabeth Ashford Memorial Family Center. Outside, news crews gathered. Community members filled the lawn. David Torres stood at the podium ready to speak. Patricia Okonkwo was there too, now working full-time on cases the center funded. Mayor Williams approached Maya. "This is an incredible thing you've done. Elizabeth would be proud." "I hope so," Maya said. "She spent her life trapped. This is about making sure no one else is." Sophie tugged her hand. "Can Mr. Buttons cut the ribbon with us?" Maya smiled. "Absolutely." They walked to the podium together. Cameras flashed. Maya thought of her grandmother Rose, of Elizabeth, of all the women who'd sacrificed for her to stand here. She thought of the girl she'd been 6 months ago, accused, arrested, alone. And the woman she'd become, heir, advocate, mother. "This center exists because of 3 women, Maya said into the microphone. "My grandmother Rose, who taught me dignity. Elizabeth Ashford, who loved me enough to let go. And Sophie, who reminded me that family is what we build, not what we're born into." She cut the ribbon. Applause erupted. Children flooded past her into the center, their laughter filling spaces that had been silent too long. Sophie looked up at her. "Are you happy?" Maya considered the question. She'd lost years with her mother. She'd faced cruelty and injustice. She'd nearly lost everything, but she'd found truth, built something lasting, created the family she'd always wanted. "Yes," Maya said, "I'm happy." That evening Maya visited her grandmother's grave. Sophie sat nearby, teaching Mr. Buttons to smell flowers. Maya placed fresh roses on Rose's headstone. "You'd like what I did with the mansion, Grandma. It's loud and chaotic and full of love, just like you." The city sprawled below, lights beginning to twinkle in the dusk. Somewhere out there, other families were facing their own battles. Other people were being judged by their skin, their circumstances, their supposed worth. Maya couldn't save them all. But she could provide resources, safety, proof that systems could be challenged and won. Her phone buzzed. A message from David. 3 more families came forward. The Ashford case opened doors. Ready to take them on? Maya smiled. Always. She'd spent 30 years wondering where she belonged, searching for identity in bloodlines and birth certificates. But belonging wasn't about DNA or inheritance or the names on documents. It was about choosing who you fought for, who you protected, who you loved. Elizabeth had chosen her once with grief and hope and impossible courage. Now Maya chose differently, not to let go but to hold on. To children who needed advocates, to families who deserved justice, to truth, even when it cost everything. The diamond bracelet that had started everything sat in a museum now, part of an exhibit on systemic racism and false accusations. The placard read, "The Cost of Prejudice, Evidence in Chenviers Ashford 2025. Maya didn't need the bracelet. She had something better. She had Sophie's hand in hers, Elizabeth's journals on her nightstand, Rose's lessons in her heart. She had a mansion full of laughter instead of portraits, a legacy built on love instead of control, and she had the certainty that blood doesn't make you family, but fighting for each other does. Ready to go home? She asked Sophie. The girl nodded, clutching Mr. Buttons. Will you read to me tonight? Always. They walked to the car together, leaving roses on Rose's grave, and Elizabeth's memory honored in everything Maya built. The city lights spread before them like possibilities, and Maya drove toward them, no longer searching for where she belonged, because she'd finally learned the truth her grandmothers had tried to teach her all along. You don't find your place in the world. You create it, and sometimes justice takes 30 years and costs everything, but it's worth it, every single time.